just a very quick tutorial on how to make the tetraxis, as it's been called by John Kostick. Kostick. Hold on. I think Kostick. Yeah, this is also sort of a way of creating the quadray coordinate system, if one likes. It's a transformable knot of 4 axes. There's another way to make it with 5-fold symmetry, but I don't know how to do it. I know how to do this, and I know that one can create more complex structures with this by making more of these star knots on these sticks, and it's possible to create various structures from that. It's also possible to increase the frequency of these in a number of different ways. And I'm not sure, I think that the closest example of a variation on that is just a little out of reach for me right now. So it'll be this. But yes, this is very simple and very beautiful, and also very useful, as it is a generalized, it's based on a generalized principle of synergetics, essentially. And it's great fun to do, even traveling. I like to make these on a train or something, perhaps when there's a child close by and they watch, and then they don't know what will come out of it, and just before it's done, or just when it's done, I collapse it, and then one can take this and with a bit of luck do like that, and it opens up. So it's a very magical, kind of like a magical wand, if you like. So, how to make it? Very easy. We need 12 skewers, because this is 4 axes, and the minimum skewers for one axis would be 3. That's by no means the maximum whatsoever, but it's the minimum, so why not start there? So I'll take 3 skewers here out of 12, and just so you know, if you do want to count, if you do count 12 spheres or 12 skewers, in this case 12 straws, if you count 12 of something and you look for this, too much light, this shape is the shape of 12 closest drawn rods or spheres. Anyways, too much light on that. So let's do this. We'll take 3 of them and just tape one end, and I'm using masking tape here. I tape together one end of those 3, like so. Simple like that, and then take the other end, do the same thing, and because these have pointy ends, it's however one likes. You can put the tape onto the end, or I'll just put it here where the taper begins. And that's the first 3. And the next 3 I'll put together on one end again, that. Like that. And now to put these together, we'll just spread the first triple apart. And if you do that, if one does that, there's always going to be two skewers on one side and one skewer on the other. And now I'm going to put the other set of three together with this, and I'll do it so that the pair of skewers pass between the 2 and the 1 on the other side here. So basically the sides where there is a pair of skewers is embraced on both sides by a single skewer. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that's the first pair of axes. Now for the next one, I'll also tape those together. And you notice I haven't yet closed the other end of the last axis. One can do that. But I want to, because I do have pointy ends, I want to make sure that I'm going to get a specific kind of symmetry in the end. And my experience tells me that I rarely get that on the first try. So I keep them open so I can turn it around later on. So here's the next set of 3 skewers taped together, and I'll put those together with these two by, let me think for a second, is it going to be this way or that way? I think okay, so to put the third one in, we open these first two again, and this time we spread them apart so that our pair of skewers for each axis is facing away from me, right? So these are on the outside and these are on the outside, and the single ones are on the inside here. And taking the next one, I put one of the skewers through the center and the other two pass up there on the top, like so. That's the third one. And lastly, for the fourth axis, I'm not going to put in the skewers yet, because yes, I will put them in, but I put them in before I tape them together, because that makes it easier. Now this is possibly looking different on your end right now, because there's many ways to hold this where the perspective changes. But I'm looking for a little star in the center there, what they call a hexagram, like the seal of Solomon or the weave of the Kagome. And this hex in the center here has 6 points around it of that star. And now the last axis that I pass through here passes by where the single skewers of the other axes meet. So in that set of triangles around that center hex. And here's the second one. And the third one. Okay, so now with every step along the way, what we want to make sure is that as we look at this, whichever two axes we look at in relationship to one another, we always have that pattern that we had with the first two, where the pair of skewers on this axis, for instance, this is the pair that is sitting on the inside of that set of three, whereas the single skewer is sitting on the outside of this pair of skewers, opposite to the single skewer of that axis. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. And I think I got that. So now I can tape this end together. Like so. And now for the last thing that I want to make sure in my case is, I spoke about that symmetry earlier, and yeah, what I want to have is that if I look at this like this, and I have one axis that points to the sky with the pointy ends, I want to have it so that the other three that pass through it are actually pointing to the ground rather than to the sky. So right now, in this case, I have this axis here is the other way around from what I want it to be. So let me just flip that over and pass that through the other way. And you see now I have them taped together, so it's a little more complicated to get them through, but they still pass through the same slots, where in this there's a center here which looks like a triangle or like a hex, and on the outside of that, of this pair, for instance, of this axis that we pass through, there's the pair sticks on this side, the single stick is here. So on the outside of that pair, opposite of the single stick, is where I pass my single stick, and that goes through in between these two singles. I hope that makes any sense. Now all of them are arranged the way that I want them to, and I'll tape just the other ends together, just as I did with the first one. And I just noticed along the way that some of the skewers that I'm using here are somewhat, they have some defects, namely the bamboo is somewhat split, or there's something with them, and of course one can take care to not use skewers with defects, so that this whole thing turns out more nicely. But that's what I have now, and that's fine for this one. So I'll do with that. And you see, that was the last tape. And that's the tetraxis. Just collapse. In the simple arrangement, it does collapse, and one can use this, for instance, as a knot for the for an 8-eyes. So if I have this here as one corner of an 8-eyes, and I put another set of knots, star knots around here, I can grow that into the 8-eyes. I can also grow this into the spheric, which I did the other day. I showed that in the other video just before this. Yeah, and there's other arrangements of this, like this, for instance. reminds me, this way around, it reminds me of an aerial or an umbrella. And this way around is where, in terms of the quadrays, we would have, I'm speaking with Kirby right now, we would have the sky pod be small and the tripod be big, high tide, low tide. And then it looks like a four-eyed star. Yeah, so that's how to make a tetraxis. Get one's hands on some quadrays to play with and take along, because they don't take up much room. Hope you like that, and if you do, please leave me a comment or a like at least, or something. But please do let me know if you like it. Take care. Bye bye.